Everyone feels like a lone wolf sometimes. We've all been there, and it's totally normal. But here's where it differs. Some folks can breeze through it like a walk in the park, and some even enjoy being alone and prefer it to having company. On the other hand, some people cannot stand it and often do everything they can to avoid it. Does that sound like you? These are 10 psychological facts about people who can't be alone. 1. The fear of abandonment. Picture yourself at a party laughing, chatting, and having a great time with friends until someone mentions that they have to leave early. Suddenly, it feels like a ton of bricks just landed on your chest, and you're hit with a tsunami of anxiety. You start thinking, what if they all leave? What if I'm stuck here alone in a room full of strangers? Sometimes it could be as small as your friend telling you they might not make it for the plans you made. Or it could be as serious as developing serious anxiety over your significant other leaving you. That's the fear of abandonment. And it's very common among folks who just can't stand being alone. This fear usually has its roots in the past, all the way back to childhood. In our early years, we learn how relationships work based on how our caregivers treated us. If they were inconsistent or not so great at responding to our needs, it might have made us anxious about being left behind or forgotten. Fast forward to adulthood, and those old patterns can still be at play. You might find yourself constantly seeking reassurance from your friends and loved ones, even when they've shown you 1,000 times that they're not going anywhere. The problem is, all this fear can make you irrationally clingy, possessive, and insecure. And if we're being real, that's not something anyone wants. This might actually cause the people who love you to leave you because of this behavior. 2. They have low self-esteem. Now, while low self-esteem can pop up for different reasons, it's still a very common problem among people who can't stand being alone. Low self-esteem is like a shadow that follows you around while dimming your sense of self-worth. On your own, you wonder if you're ever good enough, ever fun, interesting, or smart enough. So when you're surrounded by people, their attention and approval act as a temporary antidote that helps you forget those negative self-perceptions in the moment. When you don't get this validation, your self-esteem might take an ever lower dip. This is why people who don't like being alone want to be surrounded by people and strive to get approval. As soon as they're alone, it's just them and their thoughts, and those thoughts can be too much to handle sometimes. If your self-esteem is on the lower end of the scale, you might not feel inherently valuable or worthy on your own. Instead, you rely on the presence of others and their positive opinions to feel good about yourself. Their validation becomes your lifeline, and as a result, you avoid being alone like a plague. 3. They are emotionally dependent. As with all addictions, people who struggle with them depend on whatever the addiction is. That's why it's an addiction, and that's exactly what emotional dependency can feel like for some folks who can't handle being alone. Emotional dependency is like relying on a GPS for every turn in your life. It's when you've become so accustomed to having someone else's support, validation, or companionship that the idea of being alone is downright terrifying. For those who grapple with this, being alone might trigger a sense of emptiness or emotional pressure. It's as if they've outsourced a significant part of their emotional well-being to others, and without that constant support, they fear they won't function properly. 4. They grapple with attachment issues. When a person is emotionally dependent, chances are they also have attachment issues. You can think of attachment issues like the foundation of your relationships. This foundation gets built during your early years, especially with your caregivers. It's kind of like a script for how you'll handle relationships as an adult. Now, everyone has got their own attachment style. Some folks are like relationship pros. They feel comfy both with others and when they're flying solo. But for others, being alone can be quite a puzzle. It's like an ongoing tango between wanting a deep connection and dreading the idea of being abandoned or rejected. This internal push and pull can really stir the pot when it comes to attachment-related fears. 5. They struggle with anxiety. Anxiety is like the unexpected guest who crashes the party when you need some quality alone time. It can come in different flavors, like social anxiety, where you dread social situations, or generalized anxiety disorder, where you fret about everything under the sun. Now, no matter what your variant of anxiety is, they all share one thing in common: making solitude a nightmare. But what's the issue here? When anxiety is in the driver's seat, being alone can be a bumpy ride. The mind goes into overdrive and cooks up all sorts of imaginary disasters. But here's the kicker: anxiety doesn't stop at thoughts. It also manifests in full-fledged physical symptoms too. Such people may have a racing heart, shallow breathing, or difficulty breathing at all, restlessness, and sometimes even feeling sick. Whatever the symptoms are for you or for someone you know, it always boils down to one thing. It makes being alone impossible. 6. They easily lose their identity. One of the worst things anyone can develop is a codependent mindset, and this is because it can easily make you lose a sense of who you are. In turn, a lack of identity can be a significant player in the difficulty of being alone. When a person finds it hard to be alone, they are more likely to adopt the interests, opinions, or even personality traits of the people around them. It's like they are chameleons that change their colors to fit in with the people they are with, because it gives them a sense of belonging and purpose. You might find these people being referred to as people pleasers. However, when they are alone, that's when things get tricky. Because without the presence of others to mirror or define themselves against, they might feel like they've lost their anchor and identity. This lack of a solid sense of identity can make solitude unsettling. It can also lead to feelings of emptiness, confusion, or even anxiety. Do you feel like this sometimes? After all, if you're not sure who you are, how can you be comfortable in your own company? 7. They run away from self-reflection. Think of memories as a giant photo album filled with snapshots of your life. Now, for some people, flipping through those pages is like revisiting cherished moments. They can smile at the good times and even learn from the not-so-great ones. But for others, especially those who've experienced traumatic events, the process of self-reflection can be so uncomfortable that they'd rather avoid it altogether. So instead of reflecting on their own thoughts and feelings, they'd rather turn to constant social interaction as a way to keep their thoughts elsewhere. Many people who don't like being alone tend to run from self-reflection and really peeling back the layers to see who they really are at their core. 8. They lack healthy coping skills. A coping skill is like a toolbox that is crucial for managing your thoughts and emotions, especially when you're alone. Some coping skills are good, some not so much. When you're alone, you have more time and space to confront your thoughts and emotions. For most of the time, this can be a wonderful opportunity for self-reflection and personal growth. However, not everyone knows how to manage their inner emotions, and this can make solitude feel like hell for some people. Overwhelming emotions can lead to developing unhealthy coping mechanisms like overeating, substance abuse, and even something seemingly harmless like excessive social media use. 9. They are clueless about what to do. When you've spent a significant portion of your time with your friends and family, being alone can be a struggle. This is especially because it makes you clueless about what to do with your time. But why does this happen? When you're used to the presence of others, they often provide cues and opportunities for activities or conversations. But when you're alone, you become responsible for generating your own ideas and motivations. You find that you're always chronically bored and unstimulated, and only truly have fun or feel alive when you're with other people. And if we're being honest, generating your own entertainment and motivation can feel a bit like trying to fold a fitted sheet. It sounds doable in theory, but in practice, it's a whole different story. To avoid this responsibility, some people tend to avoid being alone at all costs. This in turn makes them depend on others to simply exist and have fun. 10. Fear of missing out, FOMO. FOMO is simply that nagging feeling that everyone else is living their best life while you're stuck at home in your PJs. And when this fear takes over, it can be challenging to embrace being alone because it feels like you're missing out. FOMO can make people do the silliest things, like accepting invites to events they have zero interest in, or compulsively checking their phone for updates, all because they don't want to miss out while spending time alone. In the end, it is important to understand everyone's got their ups and downs. So if you ever find yourself in any of these loops, remember that sometimes we all need some alone time to be the best version of ourselves. If you liked this video and would like to see more, like and subscribe to the Mindscope channel. Hit the bell to get notified when a new video is uploaded. And remember, share this video with your friends and loved ones. You never know when someone needs to hear exactly what we discussed in this video. Thank you for watching.